So I was at a clinic recently and saw the receptionist manually calling every single patient to remind them about their appointments. And the thing is that this is still a huge problem. People don't show up, and clinics, hospitals, and similar businesses lose a lot of money when those spots go to waste, especially when you know another person could have filled in that spot. So I'm using the healthcare industry as an example here, but you could understand how this can be valuable for other industries as well. And the thing is that live reminder calls actually work. They cut no-shows to just 3%, as you can see in this report here. But doing it manually takes a lot of time, which could be used by receptionists to handle other tasks that are a bit more important to the business. So I built a simple but very powerful AI voice agent system that handles and makes these reminder calls automatically. So in this video, I'll show you a quick demo of how it works in n8n and how you can build it too. Let's get to it. All right, so here we have a lead or a patient catch-up tracker in Google Sheets, which contains some dummy data regarding the people that the voice AI agent has called already. So here we have some important information. For example, over here in column G, we can see whether the lead is actually attending or not, which is going to be captured by the system. And this can be used by receptionists to replace the meetings with other people that will actually attend. And over here in the left, we have the event ID, which is going to be used later by the system. Okay, so this is the tracker. And then over here, we have the first workflow. And the way this works is that we are going to grab all of the events in our Google Calendar or the clinic's Google Calendar. Okay, you can set this up to be all the events in the next hours, or ideally would be in the events in the next day. Okay, so grab all the events so we can call them one day in advance, right? So we're going to do that. Then we're going to extract some information from that event, including the phone numbers and whatnot. Then we are going to compare and see if, well, those events exist already by comparing the event IDs. And then if they don't, then we're going to call all of those numbers associated with the different Google events. And then the AI agent, the voice AI agent, is going to take the stage and make those calls. Once those calls are complete, then we are going to grab some reports from those calls, and we are going to extract some important information, especially the information that is going to allow us to decide whether the lead is attending or not. Okay, so that's kind of the entire workflow, and we are going to see how that works right now. All right, so we are going to trigger this workflow, and it's going to call a phone number that I have bought on Twilio for this exact demo. So the way this is going to work is, well, we're going to grab the events from Google Calendar. Okay, as I said, this could be a day in advance, ideally, but I'm just going to do this for the demo. So we're going to grab these events, and all of them have a phone number attached to the description. So this phone number can be added manually by the receptionist at the clinic, or this can be added by some automated booking system. Also, you can use this on your online business, or perhaps you're doing online consultations or stuff like that. So this can be filled in the description automatically, also by online booking tools such as TidyCal or cal.com. Okay, but anyways, the first event contains that phone number that I have bought. So we are going to execute the workflow, and it's going to trigger. We're going to do some comparison on Google Sheets to see if my number exists already in Google Sheets, which means that, we have called that number already, but in this case, it's not the case because it's calling us. So we're going to answer.
You can remove this.
Hi, this is Robert from Bone Breaker Clinic. I'm calling to confirm your scoliosis treatment meeting scheduled for 18:15. Will you be able to make it?
Yes, I will be able to make it, yes.
Excellent. We look forward to seeing you then. Do you have any other questions for me right now?
No, I don't.
Great. Thank you for confirming. See you on the call.
Okay, it ended the call automatically as well. And now I'm going to execute this workflow. And it's getting an end of call report that contains the log of our conversation. Then we're going to use this information extractor that you see over here in order to understand and summarize the, if we're going to attend or not. Okay, so it's going to put that on Google Sheets alongside some other useful information. So as you can see here, we have row number 5, which contains my name, Joe. I'm getting treated for scoliosis, 100%. And we see the event start time, event date, and we are actually attending. Okay, so this is pretty cool, really powerful, really simple. So I'm going to show you how to build this right now. Okay, so let's go back over here. Okay, so this first node will determine how often you will run the workflow. So this depends on many things, right? How many times you want to trigger the workflow. But yeah, it mainly depends on the length of the appointment or the meeting and how much in advance you want to remind the person about the meeting or appointment. So since I've built this workflow to handle duplicate events so that you don't call someone twice, then this is not much of an issue, but there's some general guidelines to follow. So if you're going to remind them, an hour before the meeting happens or something, well, you can run this perhaps every 45 minutes, every 40 minutes, something like that. But if you're going to remind them the day before, then you can run this every 6 hours, every 6 or 12 hours. So that you can do a morning sweep, you can catch all the events in the morning, and then you can catch all the events in the afternoon or at night. Okay, and this will happen on a rolling basis. So yeah, doesn't matter that much, but it really depends as well on how much you want to trigger the APIs as well, right? Because you got the VAPI API, mainly the Google Sheet API, because if there's any duplicates, then this is going to catch it, and it's not really going to trigger the API for the voice agent. But yeah, those are some general guidelines to follow. And then we have the information extractor. So over here, we have some important information we're going to extract from Google Calendar, as I explained before. So we have the title, which has the name and the treatment type. So obviously the receptionists will have to, mention that on the title, right? It doesn't have to be word by word because this information extractor works with an LLM. So it's going to be able to determine this with no specific format, right? But yeah, as long as the name and the treatment is there, well, we will be able to extract it. And we're going to use these two in the call to make it a bit more personalized. So, hi, is this Joe? Will you attend the scoliosis treatment? And then we have the description, which is going to contain the phone number. Okay. Here we have a JSON example so that we can let the extractor understand what structure it should follow so that it's pretty rigid and there's less chance of it giving us a different output structure. Okay, because we want it to output always these three things. Always these three things and only these three things. Because the moment we add another variable or we remove another variable, we might break the workflow. And here we have the system template over here. Okay, so I will add all of this. I will add this workflow if you want on the school community. So feel free to download it from there. Okay, so now we are going to move on to edit fields. And the point of this is to just have everything in one place. So, we don't have to go back onto the other nodes, which can get a bit messy. And, in case we are going to change anything, we don't do that. So we have the date, the start time, the end time, the event ID, client name, treatment type, and phone number. And all of those are going to go in this very specific part of the workflow, which is going to handle the duplicates. And I go through a lesson in the private community where I explain how do you use the merge node as a means to compare and determine which items match in the Google Sheets, okay, or a typical CRM. So what I mean by this is we have this Google Sheet. I'm going to delete this. We have this Google Sheet with these event IDs. And what we're essentially doing over here is that we're passing the edit fields directly into this merge node. Then we are in parallel reading what's on the Google Sheet. And once we're here, we're saying, okay, we're going to compare the event IDs of the edit fields node and also the event IDs of the Google Sheets node. And we're just going to compare them. And we are going to output on the other side any rows or any items that don't match. Because if they don't match, that means that they're not in the Google Sheets, which means that we haven't called the phone number in that item. Okay, so you can see here the settings. And we're putting this because the fields don't have, to match, have different names. So in this case, we have event ID, and we have event ID over here, but they are in different formats. So that's what you do. You gotta put this on if they have different variable names. So once that's done, then we output the item that we haven't called yet, and then we are going to make the VAPI request over here. So now this is where you would have to go onto the VAPI platform and set up your voice agent, okay? But before we do that, we're gonna have a look at this really quickly. So you will need your assistant ID. Okay, this is what we're setting through. And we're adding some variables which are assistant overrides. And these assistant overrides are values that we can pass through onto the AI agent and that also get returned to us after the call. So if you know on the second workflow, we're essentially receiving an end of call report. And these variables are going to be there as well. So we can add them onto our tracker. For example, we would need the Google Calendar ID to add there. And just some other data for perhaps the receptionist to consider. And then we're obviously sending the number that we need to call, right? So this is obviously very important because if not, we won't be able to make that call. So this phone number ID is essentially the phone number that you would have to buy or purchase in order to be used within VAPI to make that call onto this phone number over here. So the two things are we need assistant ID and the phone number ID. So let's go to VAPI. And also, actually, you need the header authentication. So you need a typical authorization and then the bearer and then the key. Okay, bearer space key. So this is just a typical post request with API credentials over here. So we're going to look into that right now. Okay, so VAPI, if you don't know about VAPI, it's this amazing platform for developers to create their voice AI agents, which can be used, as you've seen, for many use cases. You can create voice AI receptionists, you can do inbound calls and also outbound calls. So we're kind of doing outbound calls in a way. So we're going to see this. And these voice agents can also fetch tools, right, that it can trigger. So we can check calendar availability. We can book calls directly using the VAPI API. And yeah, this is all very powerful. And I think I made a few videos about it in the past. Let's open the dashboard. So obviously make your account first and whatnot. And you're going to be presented in this beautiful dashboard over here. And you're going to select the single prompt assistant. Okay, so once you select that, I already have a list of assistants that I made, but you will go ahead and create your own assistant. Okay, name it, and you could perhaps choose an appointment scheduler. Okay, an appointment scheduler or a lead qualification specialist, or whatever, if you're doing something a bit different from what I'm doing. I mean, my workflow anyway is kind of a base that you can then work on top of. But yeah, so the one that I'm using in this case, the one that you heard, is the following. So we are on the first section, which is the model section. And in this case, we're using the 4.0 cluster. If you see that you don't like the way the conversations are being handled, you can choose a better model, but it obviously comes at a higher cost. It's not that big of a cost difference, to be honest, from 0.02 to, well, I mean, you have 4.5, 0.4. I mean, you know, every month that passes, the prices are dropping. So this is just going to get better and better as the models become more available. So gonna leave it like that. You can use different providers as well. There's a bunch to choose from. You can even do open router as well, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the assistant speaks first. You can choose who's speaking first as well, which is pretty interesting. I'm gonna choose the assistant to speak first because I want the voice agent to present itself. Here we're saying, hi, this is Robert from Bone Breaker Clinic. I'm calling to confirm your, and then treatment type, and then schedule for start time. But what you can add here is also the name. So you can add, for example, I don't remember exactly the exact variable, but since we carried across the variable over here on the overrides, if you remember, we carried the name. I did remember that some other time that I used it, you can use this variable that describes the name. So there it is. And then you can add other instructions as well. But I think already in the call, it should already mention the name. I have it here. So this is the system prompt. This is the first message that the agent would mention once it initiates the call. This is more of a general set of instructions. I will leave this in the community as well for you to copy and paste. You can also choose files if you want the AI agent to answer any questions. If you remember in demo, voice AI agent asked, do you have any other questions? Well, if I were to actually ask it a question in that demo, probably would not be able to answer. Probably say, I don't know, because I didn't have it set up. But you can add information about your business, okay? For example, I have a clinic over here that I used to work with, and you can add a file over here. You can upload it. And it should be in the file section. So if you go in the file section, you can upload PDF or docx and some other file formats. Okay, so going back to assistants, to Riley in this case, gonna go down. I don't touch pretty much anything because I'm not using any of this. You can change instructions for the summaries, success evaluations. There's a lot of stuff as well. So if you want me to dive into VAPI, I can always do so. I can bring in more tutorials, but I want to gauge the interest first for voice agents in my channel. But yeah, if you go down, you're gonna get to a point where we have this messaging setting, and we're gonna have to set this up. So this is the service setting. This is essentially once the call is finished, we want to connect to the second workflow. So the second workflow over here has a webhook, and we essentially will be copying this and pasting it over here. Okay, you don't need to add a secret token. You don't need to add anything. And over here, you can set up what you want to send. One of them has to be the end of call report. Okay, I'll leave you to look into the other ones. I think there's really good documentation within VAPI as well. You can also add an end of call message, which is pretty nice. And even as well, if you're not responding for some reason, then you can prompt the voice agent to just mention, well, are you still there? So this is pretty cool. So a lot of really cool stuff that you can do. Regarding the webhook over here, I'm using obviously the webhook test, but once you're switching this to production, meaning that you will be able to trigger this without having to click execute workflow. Once you set this to active, you have to add in your product webhook address. Okay, so all you would need to do is, as I showed you before on the second workflow, you switch it to production and you see that this part of the URL changes. So this one is webhook test and this one just says webhook. Okay, just I thought it was important for you to know. So everything else, I mean, conversation update, you're pretty much not going to use these, to be completely honest. I mean, at least for this demo. But they're good to add if you want to add them. This would handle most use cases for these voice agents. Because the way I have it set up is, well, I use this for other use cases, so I have a bunch of other stuff ticked as well. But the ones that you're going to need is the transcript, and mainly that, the status update as well, because a bunch of other things can be sent to the webhook. So once the call has started, during the call, and then after the call as well. So during all those points in time in the call, different messages will be sent to the webhook. But the most important one is the one at the end. So you will need to use the status update as a filter to understand, you know, what information do you actually want to pass through onto the rest of the workflow. So yeah, and obviously the end of call report is important as well. Okay, but yeah, feel free to set this up based on your use case. And that's pretty much from here. But before you set up this, you probably need a phone number as well associated to this. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can create a phone number. You can click create a phone number over here, and then you can import it from Twilio. So Twilio would allow you to call phone numbers outside of the US if you upgrade their trial. I think the VAPI number only allows you to call within the US. So it really depends where you're at. So my two choices would be VAPI number or import from Twilio. So if you import from Twilio, you need to log into obviously twilio.com, and in the trial, you can only add one number that you can call to. So it might be that you're running onto this workflow over here. Okay, you're running the workflows and you're putting a number that you want to call as a test, and it doesn't allow you to call that number. And that's because you will have to upgrade over here. So you have to go through this setup in order to upgrade your account, you know, add obviously your government ID and stuff like that so that you're not spamming random people's numbers. But yeah, the most robust option is getting a phone number from Twilio, that's for sure. Okay, and then you would need this information as well to link it up back onto VAPI. As you see over here, right? Twilio account is ID, Twilio account token, which you just grab from here once you bought your number. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. And now I'm going to go back over here, and once you have this set up, then you have something like this, and then you would choose the assistant that you want to connect to this number. So in this case, it will be Riley. Okay, I called it Riley, even though it says it's Robert, but it was this one. But once you have all this set up, then what you can do is, first of all, you will need the assistant ID. So this is under the assistant section, the assistant ID you just made, and you will go on the top over here. You see it's very hidden over here. So you're gonna copy that assistant over ID, and on the first workflow, you will paste it over here. Okay, that's the assistant ID, and the phone number ID will be on the top right. Okay, so you're gonna copy that, and you are going to paste that back over here. So let's open that again, and it's down over here. Okay, cool. So I know I did it the other way around, but hopefully that's okay with you. So now for the header auth, we need to look for the API key. So I'll create a new credential, and the way I did it is by creating a credential over here. Because what you could do, what other people would do is send a query parameter and add the key over here, which is, like you would be exposing your API key, which is, you wouldn't want to do that unless there's a specific reason to do it. You will want to create a credential over here. Okay, create a new credential and add name and the value, which is what you're going to do now anyways. But the API key on VAPI, under build and VAPI API keys. So over here, you are going to grab the private keys. You're going to copy that across and then add it on the new credentials that you create. So you will do authorization, and then value would be better. So let's fill this expression. Better space, okay, a space, and then you will add your API key. Okay, so when you do that, then mission success. You should have a green tick of some sort. And then this would be set up. So you have the header auth set up. Then you have the JSON message that you have over here, right, that we added. So I will leave this workflow anyways in the free community. And yeah, so once you have that set up, then you'll be able to test the call. Again, if you encounter any errors, feel free to screenshot it and paste it onto ChatGPT or some similar LLM. And you should get an answer about it. Make sure to obviously always add the documentation, so the URL of the documentation, so that the LLM is able to troubleshoot a bit easier. But once you have this, then that should be the first workflow completed. All right, so once you have made sure that this workflow runs properly and had a few chats with the voice agent, then we're gonna move on to the second workflow. And I already explained this before briefly, but I'm just gonna explain it again. So different messages are going to be sent to the webhook address that you have added back on VAPI, right? So if you remember, if you go down, you can add a webhook address over here, server URL. And so VAPI, the VAPI agents, send messages as soon as the call has started, during the call, and then once the call has ended. So you want to make sure that, obviously, if you're running this on testing mode, right? You have the test URL, you're going to have to execute the workflow manually. So this means that you should execute the workflow once you have ended the call. Once you have ended it, then it should go okay. Because the thing that we want here is the type of message that happens at the end of the call, which is the end of call report. This contains information about the back and forth conversations we were having with the agent. And that's what we need to decide with an agent afterwards in this workflow, whether we want to attend the call or not, and therefore add it correctly on the Google Sheet. Okay, and this, if you remember here, so to put yes or no over here. So let me go back on the second workflow. So yeah, just set it up. Okay, this is just a normal. So you would go over here, for example, or add node. Use literally type webhook, and then the if statement over here. So we want to go all the way down. Okay, in order for this to appear, you're gonna trigger this, right? So what you're going to do is first trigger this workflow, or at least trigger the API over here. Okay, trigger that with your phone number or whatever phone number you're using. And then once you're doing that, make sure you get in the call, chat with the agent. And once you're done, then you're going to execute the workflow over here, and then you should get the message. Then for testing, make sure to pin this, so this message doesn't go anywhere and you don't have to do a million calls. Okay, now you have the data pinned. Now you can run this as many times as you want. But anyways, I thought that was helpful to add over here. So you're gonna go down and you're gonna see, well, this is the message type that happens at the end of the call. Okay, so the message type has to be end of call report. Otherwise, we are ignoring it. We're not gonna do anything with it. It's of no use. Now we're just going to edit some fields so that everything is within reach. So we put our name, start time, event time, GCal event ID, treatment type. This is mainly all for just to add it as extra information onto the tracker. But the important things that we need are in this AI agent. Okay, so we first are passing the call conversation, which we can grab actually from the edit fields node. So this is something that I did not say. So thanks to the fact that we have the end of call report, then we can go down over here and choose artifact and messages. So we're going to grab this entire thing and we're going to pass it through. So that's then passed onto here, onto the information extractor, and we are grabbing this entire conversation. Okay, that's where the conversation is. We're putting it under XML tags because that's a bit more of an accurate way to instruct the LLM onto where the message is. So that's what we're doing. And the system message doesn't contain much. It's just this. So you will receive a call transcript. Always output strictly this JSON. Okay, attend yes or no. Okay, not much, not very difficult over here. But the important thing is that we require a specific output format so that it's it becomes then pretty reliable that it says yes or no. Otherwise, if you don't put that, then it might say, it might say yes, the user wants to go, instead of just saying yes only. Okay, and that is defined on the output parser. Of course, feel free to obviously choose your chat model. Okay, setting up with OpenAI, but what I was mentioning before is make sure to add the JSON example. Although it seems very simple, this just gives the AI agent a structure to how it should answer. Without this, it might say, as I said, yes, or it might say yes and a few other things. And you don't want the other stuff to appear on a structured CRM, right? I wanted to have a bit of structure. So that's it over here. And then we're just adding everything onto Google Sheets. So as I said, it becomes very comfortable to just add everything within the edit field over here so that I don't have to grab stuff from the webhook, right? So you can imagine if you had like 20 more nodes or 10 more nodes, you have to do this every time. So that's one of the main purposes of the edit fields node, just to have everything within reach. So we're adding the event ID, phone number, name, treatment, event start time, event date, and attending. And as I said, the event ID is very important because then we would be using this on the first node over here to first grab the calendar events, pass them through, and see if the event IDs of those events match any of the ones that we see over here. And this is information that gets added, once again, after we finish the call with the agent. So that information, especially the event ID, that's going to be used. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this entire system. Hopefully it was easy to follow. And if you have any questions, please drop them down in the comments below. Okay. And as I said, if you get any errors with the VAPI number, especially if it's coming from Twilio, let's say it says like the number is not authorized or something, then just remember that it's pretty likely that you're going to have to upgrade on Twilio by adding your government ID and stuff like that. Okay. So that's pretty much it for this. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up and follow. If you didn't for some reason, also let me know down in the comments, okay? Any feedback is good feedback. So I'm gonna drop off and I will be leaving the 2 workflows and also the CRM in the free community, okay? So you get a chance to play with it. Cool. Thanks a lot and I'll see you in the next video.